As many of you know by now, Psyker was the first character I leveled to 30 in the final release build of Darktide, and it's been the class I've spent the most time with thus far. I've tackled many of his most difficult and obnoxious challenges, killed a beast of Nurgle with only head pops, tried a bunch of different talents and builds, and found some that I straight up despise and some that I adore. We've had discussions about his long-term viability, particularly as it pertains to higher difficulties, and I'll reiterate now what I said then. Psyker is freaking beastly when played well, can crush Heresy and Damnation, and it has nothing to do with maintaining your warp charges whatsoever. You are doing yourself a disservice if you are constantly agonizing over your warp charge stacks. It is absolutely a fair criticism if you were to say, then why are so many talents on Psyker's skill tree focused around them? And I would agree, there are definitely some ingrained design flaws on that front. But with that said, there are only a handful of breakpoints where keeping your stacks up on certain difficulties and brain bursting certain enemies even ends up mattering in the slightest. And then it would only take you like 2 head pops instead of 3 to kill a target. So generally speaking, freaking out about keeping those stacks topped off is not worth it. And if you find yourself constantly worrying about your warp charge number and feeling like that detracts from the class overall, there's a fair chance you are actively hurting your own enjoyment of a class that, in my opinion anyway, is legitimately very fun and rewarding to play. Stop worrying so much about your stacks, just play the game. You'll enjoy it more. Thankfully, Fat Shark has lowered the level requirements on unique weapons across the board, and that includes Psyker, so you should be dropping the cool staffs much earlier and more regularly. Although I know some of you have still gotten screwed on that front, and for that, I am sorry that you have suffered. Hopefully something the devs will address soon, because obviously no one should have to play dozens of hours and hit level 30 and still not have a weapon they want. The cool thing about the synergies we're about to show off in this build video is that the only setup where keeping your warp charges topped off truly matters is one that earns them passively without much hassle or forethought, and it sets up some really cool visuals and impressive crowd control. So what we're going to be demonstrating today is the Purgatus Flame Staff, and how it links up with Soul Blaze talents for ridiculous DPS and screen clearing potential with just the press of a button. It might just be the most fun you can have with Psyker in Darktide. If you want to take a look at the build we'll be running today, got a Force Sword with pretty decent stats, and one of the coolest weapon traits in the game, Deflector, which blocks las and autogun fire at the cost of stamina, so we can pretty much just roleplay as a Jedi, and the Rifthaven Mark II Purgatus Force Staff, which also has a pretty nice perk and blessing setup. The one I'm currently using deals 20% additional damage to flak armor and unarmored enemies, which are the most numerous enemy types in the game, the ones that will be swarming you and getting on top of you, and Terrifying Barrage will suppress them as they charge into melee, which makes stacking up the burn DOT and slowing them down even easier. Now remember that burn DOTs work in this game in a way that the more you stack them up, the more damage they will do. So hitting them once, not very impressive. Hit them 4 or 5 times with the same burst, they're going to be melting away pretty quickly. I'm sure there are better trait setups, but it's absolutely been working for me. So for the build itself, we're trying to make things as efficient and mindless as possible in terms of warp charge generation. And because one of the later talents in this build will give us warp charges for free, it makes sense to pick Essence Harvest and replenish toughness frequently when killing trash mobs. Psykinetic's Wrath grants additional damage from force weapons, and in column 3, Psychic Communion gives a 4% chance for warp charges anytime an enemy dies in coherency. Another passive way for us to get warp charges and build out those impressive DOT stacks. Mind in Motion is my personal favorite at level 20. Going to be using the staff and moving around a lot, so being able to quell without a movement penalty is pretty important. But levels 15, 25, and 30 are the talents that really matter for this build. Kinetic Flare at level 25 grants a 10% chance to brain burst a target on any attack on a cooldown of 15 seconds. And Ascendant Blaze at level 30 expends all warp charges, applying a burn DOT in a wide radius in front of the Psyker that can devastate the entire screen at max stacks. Heretics killed from any source of Soul Blaze have a 10% chance to give you another warp charge. So the idea here is that you are constantly generating and expending warp charges without the need to spend much time brain bursting with your grenade key. A lot of people's biggest criticism of the Psyker is that they feel like they constantly have to run around with the G key out, not using their weapons, not using their staffs, just trying to keep their brain burst stacks up. That isn't required with most builds. I think people have kind of lost the plot on that front, but with this particular build, while you do want to keep your stacks maxed, it's a lot easier here because you don't have to actively brain burst. Most of it is being done passively for you through your staff and through your talents. The important thing to realize is that the Purgatus staff quite literally shoots Soul Blaze, so it will stack a powerful damage over time debuff on top of any Soul Blaze talent or ability you're already running. Which means if you let loose with a good burst from your staff, then press F to release your warp charges, everything on screen will start to melt. And those two are synergizing incredibly well here and dealing massive damage in a huge AoE. Very fun, very satisfying, and you can get some crazy kill feeds against armor, against hordes, against basically numberless enemies in a wide cone on screen. Now you could absolutely go for the max 6 warp charges in row 25, and you can see how devastating that trait can be with your ult in this clip. It's kind of a multiplicative effect. You can see that max 6 stacks deals a lot more damage than even max 4 stacks, but the reason we're running the 10% chance to brain burst a target with any attack instead of the max 6 stacks in that same row is one, because it's awesome and fun to use. Personally, I think it's more fun than the max 6 stacks, especially when you pop a Zerker or Mauler or Ogryn for free. Any attack has a 10% chance to brain burst them, so that's cool in and of itself. You hear that satisfying click, see their head explode, that's awesome. But number two, it makes it even more likely we maintain our warp charge stacks for the next time we use our ult. Brain burst equals warp charge. More passive ways to generate them is a very good thing. But yeah, to get a general idea of just how strong Soul Blaze can get, even before we stack Purgatus on top of it, this is on Heresy difficulty in the Psychonium, so enemies are chunky, they've got a lot of HP, and they are still getting wrecked. What I'm not sure about is if the so-called Agony debuff in the beta carried over its damage amp properties into the full game. I believe during the pre-order period, units hit by Agony, which was the previous name for Soul Blaze, took additional damage from other sources. So it had a support mechanic built in that made it easier for your allies to kill stuff too. I don't know if that's still true. If anyone knows whether the current iteration of Soul Blaze still retains that element, please do let us know in the comment section below. I would love to get a final answer on that front. Either way, it should be readily apparent at this point that max stacks at 4 or 6 can tick for a lot of damage on any difficulty. And the ideal combo is to hit a horde with a big burst from Purgatus, build up your perils to a high value, and then press F to clear the screen. You will flush your perils back down to 50%, you will deal tremendous damage, you will kill pretty much anything directly in front of you if you time it and stack it appropriately. Not much will survive it, and you'll be back up to full stacks and have another ult ready to go soon after. If you're wondering why I'm not taking the plethora of other Soul Blaze talents, it's because I don't think they're very good. Rack and Ruin and Kinetic Overload are just kind of underwhelming and anemic right now. Could definitely use some buffs. But yeah, if you threw Psyker to the side and didn't want to play with him anymore after a few days of early access, something I can't really blame you for because in the pre-order beta period, you didn't get cool staffs until like rank 17, rank 18, which is at least 10 hours of gameplay, if not more. And even then, there's no guarantee you'd get cool staffs. I do recommend having another go now because they've lowered the level requirements on that. They made it easier to level up and get the cool stuff, and I think you should try sticking with it until you start dropping those unique staffs. Doesn't have to be Purgatus, both the Void Strike and Surge staffs can be really fun too. We've done videos on those, but this has, without question, been my favorite Psyker build thus far. Psychic Flame is an incredible way to purge in the Emperor's name. Highly recommend it. Naturally, not going to be the strongest build at mid-range against enemy las teams on the super open map, so if you're playing on Heresy or Damnation, you still have to think about your positioning. You still have to realize that your staff is a short-range flamer, so you really can't be engaging lots of stuff in an open area. But that's when you want to settle into a brain-bursting rhythm and wait for a better opportunity to flank, to have your Ogryn plop down a slab shield, and then you can get into range once the opportunity arises. On any of the high-intensity, frequent horde count missions, purging the map in Holy Flame will make you an invaluable asset on any team. And of course, you're always going to be good at long range because your Brain Burst allows you to kill specials and elites quite quickly. Maybe not as quickly as a Bolter or Plasma veteran, but still very quickly if you're on the ball. So take a look at some of these plays in action. There's Damnation, Heresy, and Malice clips throughout the video. Even completed a Damnation run with Pugs, which is not the most common thing in the world. But yeah, I think this build is incredibly fun. I think you should definitely try it out if you get the chance to do so. That does so much damage, man. Oh, we got last team. Okay. Alright, well, now things get interesting. Juicy head pops. Are they going to spawn here for no reason? Yes, of course. Of course. Every single time. And they spawn below too. That's a nice overwash. I have died to that spawn multiple times now, where I'm just walking in the middle of it and then they spawn directly around me and break my stamina. Feels good to burn them back. That felt pretty good.
See upstairs.
That looks so cool. That was almost bad. Should I be with my team on Damnation? Probably. Am I having too much fun? Absolutely. Ah, dude, no. Like, I want to go over to my team, but the hordes are coming, right? This is my calling. The green circles doth appear before my eyes.
Engaging war protocol.
And in my waking dreams, I will purge them in holy fire. I'm actually surprised we made it this far with a bot.
I can't control it.
They really need an Oni-chan line for that. Like, you can't say I can't control it and not say Oni-chan after. This should be fun. Oh, we lost a homie. I think he blew himself up. That was so cool. What?
I can't control it.
This is the best finale in the game. Right here, bar none. Not even a question. They need to do more like this. A running battle to the Valkyrie.
Engaging war protocols.
Run, team! We got Zerkers.
I'm just getting started. Rage is dead. Rage is finished.
That's so sick.
Finally.
I really like this game, man. I really like this game. It's far from perfect. It has problems, but it is fun. Good game, boys.